The morning mist hung low over Windsor Castle as Queen Camilla's motorcade approached the private airfield. Her scheduled diplomatic mission to America was meant to strengthen ties between the two nations, but what should have been a routine royal departure was about to become one of the most dramatic security incidents in recent royal history. Camilla stepped out of her Bentley, her navy blue traveling suit perfectly pressed despite the early hour. The Queen Consort had been looking forward to this trip for months. The itinerary included meetings with President Biden, a speech at Harvard University, and several charity events that were close to her heart. Her private secretary, Margaret Thornfield, walked beside her carrying the red leather briefcase containing the Queen's important documents. The royal aircraft, a modified Boeing 737 adorned with the royal coat of arms, sat gleaming on the tarmac. Captain James Morrison had been piloting royal flights for over 15 years and had never encountered any issues. His crew was already conducting final safety checks when they noticed something unusual. Standing near the aircraft's boarding stairs was Sergeant Major Thomas Hartwell, the head of the Royal Protection Unit. His stern expression and rigid posture immediately caught everyone's attention. Hartwell was known throughout the royal household as a man who never compromised when it came to security protocols. His military background and 20-year service to the crown had earned him respect and sometimes fear from palace staff. As Camilla approached the aircraft, Hartwell stepped forward and saluted respectfully. "Your Majesty, I'm afraid I cannot allow this flight to proceed as scheduled," he announced in his commanding voice that had silenced many heated discussions in the past. The Queen Consort stopped mid-stride, her eyebrows raising in surprise. Margaret Thornfield nearly dropped the briefcase, while Captain Morrison emerged from the cockpit looking confused and concerned. "I beg your pardon, Sergeant Major?" Camilla asked, maintaining her composure despite the unexpected announcement. Her voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed, but Hartwell remained unmoved. "Ma'am, we have received credible intelligence regarding a potential security threat to this flight. My duty is to protect you, and I cannot in good conscience allow you to board this aircraft until we have conducted a thorough investigation." The other members of Camilla's entourage began whispering among themselves. Sir David Richardson, her private secretary, stepped forward to intervene. "Sergeant Major, surely this can be resolved quickly. Her Majesty has a very tight schedule, and the American officials are expecting her arrival in precisely 8 hours. Hartwell's jaw tightened. "Sir David, with all due respect, no schedule is more important than the Queen's safety. I have been in contact with MI5, and they have advised that we take immediate precautionary measures." The wind began to pick up across the airfield, causing Camilla's carefully styled hair to flutter slightly. She pulled her coat tighter around herself and studied Hartwell's face carefully. In her years as a member of the royal family, she had learned to read people quickly and accurately. "What exactly is the nature of this threat, Sergeant Major?" she inquired, her voice steady but firm. Hartwell glanced around at the assembled group before responding. "Ma'am, we have intercepted communications suggesting that there may be an attempt to interfere with your flight while it's over international waters. The details are classified, but I can assure you that the threat is being taken very seriously by all relevant authorities." Captain Morrison approached the group, his flight manual tucked under his arm. "Your Majesty, if I may, we could delay the departure by a few hours while the security services conduct their investigation. The aircraft has been thoroughly checked this morning, and I can vouch for its safety." Hartwell shook his head firmly. "Captain, the threat is not necessarily to the aircraft itself. We believe there may be plans to force the plane to deviate from its planned route or make an emergency landing in hostile territory." The gravity of the situation was beginning to sink in for everyone present. Lady Patricia Worthington, Camilla's lady-in-waiting, moved closer to the Queen Consort's side, her face pale with worry. "How long do you estimate this investigation will take?" Camilla asked, her practical nature taking over despite the circumstances. "At least 24 hours, ma'am." "Possibly longer," Hartwell replied without hesitation. Sir David began frantically making calls on his mobile phone, trying to reach various officials who could potentially override Hartwell's decision. But the sergeant major had anticipated this response. "Sir David, I have already spoken with the Lord Chamberlain and the private secretary to His Majesty the King. They have been briefed on the situation and support my decision completely." This revelation caused a moment of stunned silence. Margaret Thornfield finally found her voice. "But what about the American delegation? What about Harvard University? There are thousands of people expecting to see Her Majesty." Hartwell's expression softened slightly, but his resolve remained firm. "Ma'am, I understand the disappointment this will cause, but I would rather face criticism for being overly cautious than live with the consequences of ignoring a potential threat." The Queen Consort stood quietly for several moments, processing the information and considering her options. The distant sound of traffic from the nearby motorway mixed with the gentle hum of aircraft engines from other planes at the airfield. "Very well, Sergeant Major," she finally said. "I appreciate your dedication to my safety, even when it creates significant inconvenience. What are your recommendations for the immediate future?" Hartwell visibly relaxed at her acceptance of the situation. "Ma'am, I suggest we return to Windsor Castle immediately while the investigation proceeds. My team will work around the clock to resolve this matter as quickly as possible." As the group began walking back toward the waiting motorcade, Camilla turned to Margaret Thornfield. "Please contact the American Embassy immediately and explain that we have encountered an unavoidable delay due to security concerns. Assure them that we are working to reschedule the visit as soon as possible." Captain Morrison began the process of shutting down the aircraft's engines and securing the plane for an indefinite delay. His crew members looked disappointed but understood the seriousness of the situation. The motorcade journey back to Windsor Castle was unusually quiet. Camilla spent most of the time on her phone, speaking with various officials and trying to minimize the diplomatic fallout from the sudden cancellation. Her voice remained calm and professional, but those who knew her well could detect the underlying frustration. Upon returning to Windsor Castle, Camilla immediately convened a meeting with her senior staff to discuss the implications of the cancelled trip. The ornate conference room, with its centuries-old tapestries and polished mahogany table, seemed to emphasize the weight of royal responsibility that surrounded every decision. "The first priority is to contact President Biden's office personally," Camilla instructed. "This cannot be left to diplomatic channels alone. I need to speak with him directly to explain the situation and assure him of our commitment to strengthening Anglo-American relations." Sir David was already drafting press releases that would need to be carefully worded to avoid causing public panic while explaining the sudden change in plans. The challenge was to convey the seriousness of the security concerns without revealing specific details that might compromise ongoing intelligence operations. Meanwhile, Sergeant Major Hartwell was coordinating with multiple security agencies to investigate the threat that had prompted his dramatic intervention. His team had set up a command center in one of Windsor Castle's secure rooms, where analysts were working through intercepted communications and intelligence reports. The afternoon brought a steady stream of phone calls from concerned officials, disappointed American hosts, and curious members of the media who had begun to notice the unusual activity at Windsor Castle. Each conversation required careful handling to maintain both security and diplomatic relationships. As evening approached, Camilla found herself in the peculiar position of being essentially trapped in her own home by security concerns. She had spent her entire adult life balancing public duties with personal safety, but this situation felt different. The threat was vague but serious enough to ground a carefully planned royal mission. Lady Patricia brought her afternoon tea to the Queen's private sitting room, where Camilla was reviewing intelligence briefings that had been cleared for her to read. The documents contained enough detail to make her understand why Hartwell had been so adamant about cancelling the flight. "Your Majesty," Patricia said quietly, "the staff are asking whether they should begin making alternative arrangements for your American commitments." Camilla looked up from the papers, her expression thoughtful. "Not yet, Patricia. Let's see what the morning brings." Sergeant Major Hartwell seems confident that his investigation will provide clarity soon. The evening news broadcasts were already speculating about the cancelled royal visit, with reporters stationed outside Windsor Castle and at the airfield where the royal aircraft remained grounded. The palace press office was working overtime to manage the story without compromising security operations. As night fell over Windsor Castle, the investigation continued in the secure rooms below. Hartwell and his team were methodically checking every aspect of the intercepted intelligence, working to determine whether the threat was credible enough to justify the continued disruption of royal schedules. The weight of responsibility hung heavily on everyone involved. A wrong decision could have catastrophic consequences, but overcaution could damage important international relationships and public confidence in the royal family's ability to carry out their duties. In her private quarters, Camilla reviewed the day's events and prepared for what could be a prolonged period of uncertainty. She had learned long ago that royal life often required patience and adaptability, but this situation was testing those qualities in unexpected ways. The castle's ancient walls had witnessed centuries of royal drama, but the modern challenge of balancing security concerns with public duties created a unique type of tension that none of her predecessors had faced in quite the same way. The second day at Windsor Castle began with an urgent knock on Queen Camilla's bedroom door at dawn. Margaret Thornfield entered with a steaming cup of coffee and a grave expression that immediately told Camilla the situation had evolved overnight. "Your Majesty, Sergeant Major Hartwell requests an immediate audience. The investigation has uncovered some disturbing developments," Margaret announced, her voice barely above a whisper. Within minutes, Camilla was dressed and walking briskly through the castle corridors toward the secure briefing room. The ancient stones seemed to echo with each footstep as she prepared herself for whatever revelation awaited. Hartwell stood at attention when she entered, surrounded by computer screens, intelligence documents, and several officials she didn't recognize. His usually immaculate uniform showed signs that he had been working through the night. "Your Majesty, I'm afraid the threat we identified yesterday was more serious than we initially believed," Hartwell began, gesturing toward a large wall display showing flight paths and communication intercepts. "Our investigation has revealed a coordinated plot involving multiple international actors." The room felt electric with tension as Hartwell explained how intelligence services had uncovered a plan to hijack or sabotage royal flights over the Atlantic Ocean. The plot involved sophisticated technology that could interfere with aircraft navigation systems and force planes to land in predetermined locations. "The individuals behind this operation have been monitoring royal travel schedules for months," continued Agent Sarah Mitchell from MI5, who had arrived at Windsor during the night. "They specifically targeted your American visit because of its high profile and the extended flight time over international waters." Camilla absorbed this information with characteristic composure, but the gravity of the situation was unmistakable. The realization that she had come within hours of potentially flying into a carefully orchestrated trap sent chills through everyone in the room. Captain Morrison, who had been called in for the briefing, looked visibly shaken. "Your Majesty, in 30 years of flying, I have never encountered anything like this. These people had access to classified flight plans and detailed knowledge of our security procedures. The investigation had revealed that the threat came from a network of international criminals who specialized in kidnapping high-profile individuals for political leverage. Their previous targets had included business leaders, diplomats, and government officials from various countries." Sir David Richardson entered the room carrying urgent diplomatic cables from Washington. "Ma'am, President Biden has been fully briefed on the situation. He's expressed his complete understanding and has offered any assistance American intelligence agencies can provide." This gesture of international cooperation in the face of a shared threat provided some comfort, but it also highlighted the global nature of the security challenge they were confronting. Agent Mitchell continued her briefing with increasingly alarming details. "The perpetrators had planned to force your aircraft to land at a remote airfield in Eastern Europe, where they had established a sophisticated operation designed to hold you hostage while making demands of both the British and American governments. The audacity of the plot was breathtaking. These criminals had invested significant resources and months of planning in an attempt to kidnap a member of the British royal family during an official state visit." Hartwell stepped forward with maps showing the intended flight route and the location where the hijacking was supposed to occur. "Your Majesty, had we proceeded with yesterday's flight, we would have been flying directly into their trap. Our aircraft would have been vulnerable for several hours over the Atlantic, where they had positioned ships and equipment to interfere with our navigation and communications. The technological sophistication of the plot was particularly concerning. The criminals had access to military-grade jamming equipment and had studied royal security protocols in detail. They knew exactly when and where the royal aircraft would be most vulnerable. Lady Patricia Worthington, who had been listening in stunned silence, finally spoke up. How did our security services discover this plot in time? Agent Mitchell smiled grimly. We intercepted their communications purely by chance during a routine monitoring operation targeting a completely different criminal organization. One of their associates made an error that revealed the entire network. This revelation emphasized how close the plot had come to success. Without that fortunate accident of intelligence gathering, Camilla's flight would have proceeded as scheduled, with potentially catastrophic consequences. The briefing continued with details about the international manhunt now underway to capture the criminal network. Law enforcement agencies from multiple countries were coordinating their efforts to arrest the perpetrators and dismantle their organization. Captain Morrison raised an important question about future royal flights. Sergeant Major, how do we ensure this type of threat doesn't compromise royal duties going forward? Hartwell had obviously been considering this challenge. We're implementing new security protocols for all international royal travel. Every flight will now require additional intelligence screening and enhanced technical security measures. The implications for Camilla's role as Queen Consort were significant. International travel was a crucial part of royal duties, and any disruption to that capability would affect Britain's diplomatic relationships worldwide. President Biden called personally to speak with Camilla about rescheduling the American visit. Their conversation, conducted over secure lines, lasted nearly an hour as they discussed both the security situation and the importance of maintaining strong Anglo-American relations despite the circumstances. Your Majesty, President Biden assured her, whenever you're ready to make this visit, America will welcome you with the highest honors. Your safety is our paramount concern, and we understand completely why this trip had to be cancelled. The American response demonstrated the maturity of international relationships when faced with genuine security threats. Rather than diplomatic irritation, there was understanding and cooperation. Throughout the day, reports arrived about the arrests of several suspects in various European cities. The international law enforcement operation was moving swiftly to neutralize the threat network before they could reorganize or target other high-profile individuals. Hartwell provided regular updates on the arrests, each one bringing greater confidence that the immediate threat had been contained. By late afternoon, the primary architects of the plot were in custody, along with most of their equipment and resources. The evening brought a sense of relief mixed with sobering awareness of the ongoing security challenges faced by members of the royal family. Camilla convened a meeting with her senior staff to discuss lessons learned and adjustments needed for future travel. This experience has taught us that our security procedures, while thorough, must constantly evolve to address new types of threats, she observed during the meeting. We cannot allow criminals to dictate our ability to serve the nation and the Commonwealth. Sir David had been working throughout the day to reschedule the American visit for the following month, with enhanced security measures that had been developed in consultation with both British and American intelligence services. The rescheduled visit would include additional stops to compensate for the disruption and to demonstrate that royal duties would continue despite security challenges. Harvard University had graciously agreed to postpone the planned speech, and President Biden had extended the official invitation to include additional meetings. Captain Morrison spent the evening reviewing new flight protocols that would make future royal travel more secure. The royal aircraft would receive upgraded communication and navigation systems designed to prevent the type of interference that the criminals had planned to use. As news of the successful arrests reached Windsor Castle, there was a palpable sense of relief among the staff and security personnel. The immediate crisis had passed, but everyone understood that this incident marked a new chapter in royal security awareness. Agent Mitchell briefed Camilla on the broader implications of the investigation. Your Majesty, this criminal network had been planning similar operations against other international figures. Your cancelled flight may have prevented multiple kidnapping attempts across Europe. This revelation added another dimension to the significance of Hartwell's decision to ground the royal aircraft. His insistence on following security protocols had potentially saved lives beyond just the royal party. The investigation also revealed how international criminal organizations were becoming increasingly sophisticated in their targeting of high-profile individuals. The days when royal security could rely on traditional methods and protocols were clearly ending. King Charles called from his own engagement to express his support for the security decisions that had been made. The conversation between the monarchs reinforced the importance of putting safety above all other considerations, regardless of the diplomatic or public relations consequences. Late that evening, Sergeant Major Hartwell knocked on Camilla's private office door for a final briefing of the day. His exhaustion was evident, but his satisfaction at the successful outcome was unmistakable. "Your Majesty, I want to express my gratitude for your understanding and support during this difficult situation. Many people in your position might have questioned or overruled my decision to cancel the flight." Camilla looked up from the papers she was reviewing and smiled warmly. "Sergeant Major, your dedication to duty and your willingness to make difficult decisions have potentially saved many lives. The Crown is fortunate to have officers of your caliber." The conversation continued with discussions about long-term security improvements and the ongoing challenge of balancing royal duties with personal safety. Both understood that this incident would influence royal security protocols for years to come. As midnight approached and Windsor Castle settled into its ancient rhythms, the immediate crisis was over. The criminal plot had been thwarted, the perpetrators were in custody, and plans were already underway for a successful rescheduled visit to America. The experience had demonstrated both the vulnerability and the resilience of modern monarchy. While new threats required constant vigilance and adaptation, the fundamental commitment to public service would continue, protected by the dedication of professionals like Sergeant Major Hartwell, who understood that true courage sometimes means saying no to a queen.